Can you all hear me? Oh, wow, that's loud. Okay. Yep, I'm Heather Ellsworth. Hi. Nice to see you all. I'm here to tell you about GNOME desktop Snap applications. So I've been at Canonical for two months now, and this is basically what I've been working on. So making it easier to make GNOME desktop snaps. So I'm going to introduce some SnapCraft GNOME extensions. So here we go. So before I get into like what I've done, just dive into the details, right? Brief outline. I want to lay some foundation because not everybody's familiar with Snap and SnapCraft are. So we'll talk about what are snaps briefly, what's SnapCraft, what some of the core pieces of the metadata packaging file is, and how we can improve the developer experience by using this new GNOME SnapCraft extension, and kind of what is next. So let's lay some foundation and talk about Snap, SnapCraft. What the heck are they? Snaps are simply a bundled app with its dependencies that will work across many different Linux distributions without modification. So this is really handy if you have an application that depends on a newer library that maybe your distro doesn't provide, or depends on an older library that's getting deprecated, right? If you have Python 2.7 applications that are not going to be rewritten anytime soon, you can absolutely snap them and can retain a user base. And it also provides like a path to give your users applications with like more updated libraries and other dependencies, right? Or you can just snap something for the fun of it. And so snaps are discoverable and installable from the Snap Store. You don't have to install from the Snap Store. You can build locally and install that snap locally. You can give that snap package to your friend, have them install it locally. So it doesn't have to be with the Snap Store, but that is typically how snaps are found and installed. Snaps are built from a tool called SnapCraft. We'll get more into that next slide. And then snaps are run and managed by Snapd, that typically the distros provide. So SnapCraft is the build tool that is used to build snaps. I said that just like 10 seconds ago, right? And it builds all kinds of snaps. So historically, there have been a lot of headless snaps, so like for IoT, robotics, that kind of thing. But we can also do desktop snaps, targeting mostly KDE and GNOME. And then, yeah, it uses the SnapCraft YAML file of a project in order to build the snap. And to me, what's really important is that SnapCraft is a bunch of not scary Python that you can go and check out and contribute to, and it's great. So now if we look at, what some of the core GNOME requirements are for the snaps, you'll see there's a lot of more pieces kind of on top of it than like a headless app would have. So the SnapCraft YAML for a GNOME app is going to have many parts. Some special to it being a desktop app, some not. But obviously it's going to need some sort of GNOME theming info that uses plugs and slots, and those terms can, it's not real obvious what those mean. So I have found this picture to be very useful, that, a plug is the consumer of an interface and a slot is a provider of an interface. So I actually have this printed out and hanging on my wall behind my monitor, so I look at it sometimes. Yeah, so like an example is if you have an application that needs access to the camera interface, well, then you have to define some sort of plug that consumes that information. Or for a slot, an example would be if you want to provide what the name of your application is for dbus to register with like GTK application registration, that is a slot. It provides this information to the system. And then there's going to be a desktop icon because people want to click on icons to run their app. I mean, you can also run your snap from the command line, but desktop apps are important. One nice thing is, so there's going to be an apps section that defines what the apps are that are made that are bundled in this application, this Snap, and it can have more than one. You can actually, that can be pretty useful if you wanted to provide a toolbox of stuff. Like there's this Snappy Debug Snap that has 6 apps that are all fantastic for, using as, it's essentially like a toolbox for debugging. Events is another great one. It snaps, or it provides 3 different apps: Events, Events Previewer, Events Thumbnailer. So there's an app section and then there's a parts section. And the parts section is really what I feel like is the meat of the YAML. And all of the parts come together to build the apps. So parts that are used, so there are a lot of common pieces, common parts used across GNOME applications. There are a lot of common plugs and so on. So some examples of parts that use libraries needed by GNOME themed apps specifically would be like glib, you see libgtk3 dev use, gobject introspection, that kind of thing. So how can we improve the developer experience by using extensions, SnapCraft extensions? So I said the word common a lot, at least I think it a lot. There are a lot of common pieces across these GNOME apps, and so what you would find before these extensions is you would say, okay, well, how am I going to snap this? You go find some examples on the forum. They all have these common pieces. So what we want to do is abstract those away, so no longer do you need to copy and paste. It's just kind of done for you. We want to provide new libraries to the users because our current base is Ubuntu 18.04, which, it's a couple years old almost, right? So I want to give newer libraries, and then a common build environment is always nice, so you don't have to, well, we'll get into it more. So what is the extension exactly? It is an alternative method of building snaps. You don't have to use it. You can, of course, still provide the traditional theming information and build environment and what have you. But I don't know why you wouldn't, I guess, is where I'm going with that. It is SnapCraft code. So GNOME 3.28 was the first extension that was kind of the experiment of this. And then some work was done on GNOME 3.32 to kind of make it better, abstract this build snap and platform snap from each other. But 3.34 came out before GNOME 3.32 extension could be released. So that work was just rolled into the 3.34. And then GNOME 3.34 SnapCraft extension is almost ready for release. So I was trying to get it released before I came here, but maybe in the next couple of weeks it will be. And the extension uses a build snap and a platform snap. So what do I mean by that? A build snap is basically a snap that just builds a whole host of libraries. There's about 3 dozen common libraries that GNOME snaps need, like glib. I mean, I mentioned some earlier, but it also builds like harfbuzz and pango and cairo and so many things. So it builds these libraries from source, and then the platform snap basically takes that build snap and then makes it available to your snap so that you have access to all of that stuff for build time. But it's not packaged in your snap, so it's not giant, right? You're not packaging glib with every app. But you have access to that new glib every time you build your snap, so that's very handy. The extension also removes the need to use explicit GNOME plugs, and it simplifies the app-specific plugs. And then it obviates the need for these desktop launcher scripts, these helper scripts that you also found yourself copy and pasting a lot. So I know there's a lot here, right? This is just a snippet of an app, a SnapCraft YAML. And because it's YAML, I tried to bold the kind of top level pieces, so like plugs, slots, app, parts. That's all like kind of the top level of the YAML. And you can see that, like, so we have all of the theming stuff. We were always copy pasting that from some existing GNOME app. The slot, that's where you commonly see the dbus name listed. and then the list of apps. So this is an example of Tally, for example. And in this case, there's one app, which is quite common. And then we point to the desktop icon, and then we list our parts. So in this YAML, we had two parts. We had the kind of helpers, desktop helpers, scripts, and then we had the app itself. And there's a ... here because there was a lot more, and it wasn't really relevant here. So, so you know, in the 332 branch, this is what the SnapCraft YAML is. And then if we apply the extension, we can get rid of all of this. We can remove, in this case, all of the app-specific plugs. We can remove this entire part, and then Tally no longer needs to build after that part is built. And all we do is add the extension, essentially, change the command. So you're essentially removing 30 lines of code, and you're making it more intuitive. So if a new person is coming to snap something, it makes sense to add an extension, assuming that they know what GNOME 334 or 328 is, right? That is a GNOME release. So that's really nice. It's a much more intuitive, much more maintainable data file to carry forward. So I mentioned briefly that we have this build snap that's kind of like an underlying piece that really the person building a snap doesn't need to care about. But because it's a key integral part of the extension, I wanted to tell you a little bit about it. I told you there were like 36 projects that we build from source, and we do that from either the latest stable GNOME branch, if there's a 334 branch. If not, then we look for the latest stable branch or tag or what have you. And this is better than using like the default libraries that are in an old Ubuntu 18.04 base. And it's really nice that because the build snap, all of those libraries are provided to any snap you build using an extension, so you don't have to list any of those packages that would be used in your snap. So you can thin it down that way too. And then this is the GitLab repo for GNOME SDK, which is, there's a branch for the build snap, there's a branch for a platform snap. And then we have a common build environment. This is really nice. So I found myself going, now where are the GDK pixbuff loaders again? And linking to that every time. So this is only, what, seven environment variables, and we're using the GTK portals as well. And this entire environment is available to every part in every snap that you build that uses the extension. Now, of course, you can overwrite them if it doesn't work. If your get text is in a different location, then okay, you can overwrite it as needed, right? If you need full control. But it's important that we do kind of lay the ground in this build environment to make it useful to all the parts. So yeah, that's nice. Okay, so that's really cool, right? What is next? Well, maintenance is a really big part. So there are a lot of GNOME apps that exist that have snaps. In most cases, the snap metadata is living in the project itself in gitlab.gnome.org or whatever. And so it's important to go through each one of those and update them to use the new extension and modify any, remove any build packages that don't need to be there because they're provided in the build snap. And yeah, just kind of making sure that all of the snap metadata out there for the various apps is up to date, right? Documentation is never done. Anybody that knows me knows I love documentation like a crazy person. So yeah, that's always undergoing improvements by myself and community. So that's great. And then we really want to encourage community involvement because, these are all projects that we care about. some may care about some projects more than others, so that's okay. I want to help project maintainers become more involved in the maintenance of their project Snap, even if that's just like I submit a pull request and then you build it and test it and say, cool, yeah, it runs, right? I mean, I'm going to do that too before I submit any pull requests. But yeah, I mean, if people are interested in learning a little bit more, I'm always available to answer questions. And if I don't know the answer to questions, I'll certainly, get you to the right person and learn myself. And you can expect a new GNOME extension for every GNOME release. So GNOME 334 was released some time ago, and the extension is, not out there yet. But in the future, I would like it to be pretty quick. And since we've kind of got a lot of foundation for the GNOME 334, like the build snap, the platform snap, and all that jazz, then it should be easier to get those out faster. Another cool thing is that we have a Snap packaging workshop tomorrow in the Sala de Reunions room from 1 to 3, where we're going to have a good time. We're going to talk about Snap packaging. We can help anybody package their Snap if you have packaging issues or just have questions. Come join us. Here's some useful links. So that's where the SnapCraft code is, the build tool, right? And then the SDK, which is the build and platform Snap, you can find it here. And then there's the Tally example that I gave. All the Snap Store, docs, forum, it can all be found on snapcraft.io. And then here's my GNOME blog where I have posted these slides. So thank you very much. Are there any questions? You can find me on the interwebs with this stuff. So.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. If I understood well, the extensions are kind of mounted in the application namespace, something like that, so they can see all the files. This sounds a little bit like Flatpak runtimes, and I was wondering if you consider basing your extension in just GNOME runtime, or just using the same.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I know that Valentin and his team have done a lot of work on making the free desktop SDK available to be used by snaps as well. And his talk earlier in the week kind of showed that they're working on that. It's experimental. I didn't realize it was so far along, so I'm excited to go try it like after the conference. But using that as a base instead of strictly Ubuntu 18.04 base is in the plan, and I hope we can do that. And then, yeah, if we can put more stuff, maybe in the GNOME runtime, that might make sense to do.
Can I quickly add to that previous question? So, if you rebase on top of the free desktop SDK, then we could also consider adding directly to the upstream GNOME runtime the same SnapCraft exports. So we could directly build the Flatpak and the Snap runtime at the same time, so you won't even have to rebase your work on it. It's like one source tree, we could build the both. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think until that is readily available and stable and we're using it, it's fairly easy to slap this together, right, and provide this to users. But then I think once we have a shared base with Flatpak, we should definitely use that. Okay, thank you very much.